My recommendation for brands in general is looking to diversify your supply chain to the best of your ability. One of our brands, they do workwear, gloves, shirts, and all the rest. They had been sourcing in China for many, many years. And we came in and we found them a supplier that could make the same products at a higher quality at a dramatically lower cost. We can do this because our AI agents are speaking with hundreds of suppliers at once, so we can get many more competitive quotes. I actually got a text from the owner this morning. He did the calculus. His costs of production with the tariffs with Cavela was lower than his cost of production 6 months ago with his original supplier before the tariffs. He might be the only brand in his entire category whose costs are actually lower now than they were 6 months ago.
Anthony, I want to welcome you to the DTC Podcast. We were just saying this could not be a more topical moment to be having this conversation. At the time of recording, it is April 3rd. We're dealing with the fallout of Trump's Day of Liberation that's happening here. So welcome to the DTC Podcast, man. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about Cavela and the fallouts from this.
Likewise, Eric. Thanks for having us on.
Well, why don't you start with why? We'd love to start with the reason why. Why did you build Cavela?
Yeah, so look, a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in Southeast Asia. My family's been there for 3 generations.
Where?
I was born in Malaysia. We lived
Malaysia,
in
cool.
Thailand, Singapore, kind of all
I lived in Thailand for 1 year in my early in my life, and it was hugely formative for me. I just love it.
Beautiful. Yeah, Thailand is definitely dear to my heart as well. Look, my family's been in trade for some time, mostly commodities, soft goods. But the other side of my life has been AI. So my background is in computational stats. I built various AI teams, different data science projects. And Cavela was this realization that there is something to be done at the intersection of these two. So I was looking at the landscape of e-commerce and I saw, look, e-commerce has been largely automated. It's very easy today to sell something online. What is still missing is what I call the other side of the equation. So before you can sell something, you have to be able to make that thing. And making things is still very time consuming. It's very convoluted. It's not really clear how you can go about it in an efficient way. And when I started building Cavela, the question was, well, does it have to be? I was seeing what was happening in the world. Suppliers are increasingly online and accessible. There is this new technology, language models, ChatGPT, that is hitting the scene. I realized there's a lot of the service industry is going to change. And I saw that in sourcing specifically. And the desire to make Cavela came from this idea that we could actually help anyone, anywhere, make anything. And that would solve a huge pain point for a lot of brand owners out there.
I can see it. I've dabbled. I actually haven't launched any e-commerce products, but I've gone through some sourcing research, and it's pretty opaque, right? It's a pretty opaque process where you can probably find someone, if you go on Alibaba or whatever, you can find someone to make your product, but you have no idea if it's the best person or if it's a trustworthy person, really. So I imagine that's a big challenge.
Absolutely. Finding reliable suppliers, vetting suppliers, but then the entire process itself, right? This will be familiar to a lot of your listeners, but when you're trying to make a product, you're searching online, going to trade fairs and swapping months of emails or messages on WhatsApp and WeChat, and you're sampling multiple rounds and then finally placing an order. It's just a very time-consuming and convoluted process.
I want to get into some of your thoughts on tariffs and how Cavela is actually potentially helping brands navigate this. But just walk me through a little bit, just so I understand the product a little bit better. So say I'm an entrepreneur. I've already made my product. Maybe it's for people that have already talk to me about the use case for Cavela specifically.
Absolutely. So it's very simple. Cavela is a virtual sourcing agent that automates how brands and businesses find the best suppliers and make their products. So we walked through what the normal creation process for products is. If you want to create a product, you search online, go to trade fairs, emails, messages, WhatsApp, WeChat, go to do rounds of sampling, finally place an order. Anyone who's used Alibaba, this is all very familiar. So what we've done is that we've automated all of that. So how does it work? With Cavela, you tell an AI agent, and we can get into AI agents, you tell an AI agent what you want to make. It will ask you questions, build out a product description with you, and then it'll search a database of 200,000 suppliers across 40 different countries, and then contact, vet, those suppliers, get quotes from the ones that match your needs, and it even handles sample shipping, ordering, QA, imports, tariffs, and delivery to your warehouse. So because we maintain a large premium network and automate most of this process, we can basically secure more competitive quotes from better suppliers. So we, on average, cut production costs by 40% and save you 95% of the work in the process.
That's wild. I was just talking about AI agents because I use ChatGPT every day. I've created a GPT actually for the podcast when it comes to launching it and putting out the description and things like that. Basically from the transcript, it's all kind of automated, which is great. But I haven't experimented with agents and all. And agents are essentially like having an employee. Like that's basically one way to think about it.
It's like having like an executive assistant that can do all of your tasks. So the simple way to put this is that you get an email from your boss who says, hey, can you schedule this meeting for this time? The AI agent will receive that email, interpret it, put something in the calendar, and respond, okay, yeah, sounds good, it's done. And that work has been done by someone, and it didn't have to go through you. So how that applies to sourcing is that you could imagine an assistant that helps you with every step of the sourcing process, right? So you tell your assistant, hey, I'd like to start a new line of candles. The assistant will say, okay, great, let's jot down exactly what you're looking for. What does this product look like? What are the attributes? And then the assistant will then go out, find all the suppliers that can make that product, and then contact them. Hey, what are your MOQs? Hey, what are your lead times and all the rest? Get the quotes, and then coordinate all of the sampling, coordinate the QA, coordinating the ordering and sending to your warehouse. And that's what we've built.
Is there something that already exists like this where you'd have a whole team of people doing this? Are there businesses already out there that maybe don't have the AI but are using people to do this? Is that one of the big innovations, or does this kind of business not really exist?
I mean, this is what large businesses do when they hire dedicated procurement teams, right? So One way to solve this problem is to throw a bunch of money at it and hire a large procurement sourcing team that will do all this work for you. And what we're doing is we're giving small and mid-sized businesses access to an enterprise-grade sourcing team that fits in your pocket, basically.
So we've talked about the use case of like when you're starting a product, but the same thing could be used to sort of like gut check whether you are currently working with the best supplier, the best manufacturer.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's especially important now, right, with the tariffs, where you have products that you're making and you'd like to say, well, look, I'm now paying 30, 40, 50% more on my products. Can I get a more competitive quote? This applies for both.
So you mentioned in the little pre-interview we did that you're fielding a lot of inbound requests at this moment in the heat of these issues. What are the problems and what are the kind of messages that you're fielding right now?
First of all, there's a lot of confusion out there. People are not really knowing what to do. They're seeing their costs suddenly skyrocket. Their production costs are going to go up with tariffs. They don't really know what to do about it. The tariff landscape is changing on a daily basis. Tariffs are being applied, they're being repealed, they're being threatened. People don't really know what to do. And so, first of all, it's just how do I navigate that? And so, that's part of what we do, which is we know that there is always one best solution out there. What Cavela does is it just finds that best solution for you so you don't have to worry about it. But then people are just trying to figure out, well, how can I optimize my business in the wake of these tariffs? Should I be sourcing in the United States? Should I be doing this in Latin America? Should I be doing this in Asia? And what we've done is we've just built something that allows you to not really have to worry about any of that, because what we're going to do is we're going to source in all these different areas and do so on sort of a semi-continuous basis. So all you have to worry about is the other side of your business.
Do you think one of the stated reasons for these tariffs is to try to build the manufacturing base back up in the US? And to an extent, it probably already has started that process. It's going to take a lot longer than I think people want it to. My question to you is as someone who's sourced extensively overseas, is it a realistic solution to have a lot of products be made in the US, or will it always be cheaper, even with tariffs, to get things made overseas?
It depends. Look, the reality is there's a lot of factors here. It takes a long time to source a product, right? So if you're going to move your manufacturing base from Asia to the US, that's a huge investment. And so when the landscape of tariffs changes with the speed at which it has, there have been over 20 major tariff events in the last 3 months of this administration. It kind of, put some pause in your decision to actually invest heavily in the US. Now, if things remain stable for a very long time, I can absolutely see that. But look, you have to, just looking at, for instance, COVID, right? During COVID, the supply chains kind of shut down for 2 years? And look how long it took to get that machine back up and running. That was 2 years. Think about how long it'll take to get the machine up and running when it's been off for 50 years, which has been the case with the United States. So I think that there is a path forward where there's a lot of manufacturing that returns to the States, but I don't think it's going to happen that quickly.
And are there, again, I am just, reading and reacting to this now, and I like looking at the charts of where all the tariffs are happening. Is there, do your AI agents take into account, for instance, where the highest tariffs are and are actually looking to factor that into the decision about where things are made?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've been helping brands anticipate some of these tariffs for a while now. We're helping strategize to a certain extent. What's tricky in this case is that, brands were looking at what was happening in China, and they're like, oh, I want to source in Vietnam or Cambodia. And you can see just, yesterday, those countries got hit with some pretty hard tariffs. So to the extent that you can anticipate some of these things, you're it's tough. But what we're doing is that we're trying to give a lot of options. So we source across many different countries, and we have brands that are essentially have diversified their supply chain across many different countries. We have brands that are producing one product in China, but another in Bangladesh, another in Mexico. And the idea is that by diversifying their supply base, they are essentially mitigating the risks. And so they lose a little bit more here, but they win there, and it kind of averages out. And we also have some brands that have multiple suppliers for the same product. And so they have one supplier that's ready to go in China, and they have another supplier that's ready to go in Pakistan. And the idea is that they'll pull the trigger on whoever makes the most sense in the moment.
Now, is it, and I could see, I just envisioning like what a procurement team would look like for people trying to build that out. I could see how the cost could multiply in a hurry. So are you then more advising people to find better deals, like even sort of regardless of the tariffs? Is it more about just getting better deals with better producers rather than trying to move shops from country to country?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, in order to optimize your supply chain, you kind of need things to remain stable for a little bit, right? It's really hard to optimize when the tariff landscape changes as frequently as it currently is. So my recommendation for brands in general is looking to diversify your supply chain to the best of your ability. And, even if you are in countries that are impacted by high tariffs, try and find the supplier that is most cost effective. So I have an example here. We have one of our brands they do workwear. So workwear for, gloves, workwear shirts, and all the rest. And we started working with them a couple of months ago, and they were sourcing in China. And they had been sourcing in China for many, many years. And we came in and we found them a supplier that could make the same products at a higher quality at a dramatically lower cost. And we can do this because, our AI agents are speaking with hundreds of suppliers at once, so we can get many more competitive quotes. So we cut their costs dramatically. And, I actually got a text from the owner this morning, and he was saying he did the calculus, and his costs of production with the tariffs with Cavela was lower than his cost of production 6 months ago with his original supplier before the tariffs. So he might be the only brand in his entire category whose costs are actually lower now than they were 6 months ago, simply because we found him a much more competitive supplier.
Is it like a one and done thing where you find your supplier and, or is it are these AI agents working in an ongoing way?
It's kind of an ongoing way. So we're living in a world where the macroeconomic landscape is shifting pretty quickly. And so where it makes sense to source today might not make sense to source tomorrow. And this is kind of the thesis here, that this old way of working where you have a long-standing relationship with the same supplier for 20 years makes sense in some cases, but it doesn't make sense for everybody. And we're now in a world with these automated tools, and these suppliers are increasingly online, where you can turn over a lot faster. And what that allows you to do is to tap into a more efficient market. The reason we're able to get much more cost-effective sourcing options for brands is because sourcing is super inefficient right now. It's just terribly inefficient. You're a brand, you'll speak to maybe 4, 5, 6 different suppliers, and you'll choose the one that is the most competitive in that moment, or with whom you have the most trust. In a world of automated sourcing, you're not speaking with 5, 6 suppliers. You're speaking with a couple hundred at once, and so you're always going to get more competitive costs, and you're always going to get a more a more agile supply chain that can turn on at the drop of a hat when you need to. And that's what we're seeing right now, that we have all these brands that need to quickly review their sourcing solution, and they just can't because everything is still handshakes and phone calls.
And then I guess everyone, especially for people starting out, everyone's looking for economies of scale, right? The more you can order, the lower you can get the cost. Does Cavela help shortcut that at all, or is that still a big part of the process? You still need to, with new vendors, you still need to order at a certain rate and then grow with economies of scale?
What we do is we surface what's out there, right? So, if you came in and say, look, I want to make, the super complex product, I want to make 10 of them. If no suppliers are going to want to touch you, then there's very little that we can do. What we can do is that if there is a supplier out there that is willing to do that, we will find them. So that's where Cavella can help. But what you've touched upon there too is this idea that companies grow, businesses grow, and as your brand grows, you might grow out of your supplier and be able to grow into another. There are excellent suppliers out there that have MOQs that are above what you're producing today, but they might be what you're producing tomorrow. And so that's what we provide. Is essentially we grow with the company. So we can source your product today when you're only producing, 500 or 1,000 of your item. But once you've scaled and you're now producing 5,000, well, you've now unlocked a new suite of suppliers that we can contact. And that might have other advantages, better unit cost, for instance, maybe more options, more customization. And so we can grow with the businesses. And so continuous sourcing allows us to take care of everything that is production, and then you can worry about everything else in your brand.
I imagine your tool over time is going to also have a lot of impact on the entire ecosystem. If we were in an environment before where you're getting 10 quotes on a product versus now when you're getting hundreds, it's also going to sort of democratize or level the playing field in some ways, I imagine, among the producers. And it's going to create maybe more competition for people's business, knowing that people are going to be able to survey so many different potential producers.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of market inefficiencies right now that make it that's why costs vary so much, and why we're able to make so many cost savings is that we can find the best deals out there and pass them on to the users.
I talk with companies that are finding AI solutions for e-commerce problems all the time. And I think customer service is a big one. Obviously, there's a lot in data, when it comes to your acquisition and improving your attribution and things like that. But I hadn't really thought of it as its application in the sourcing business. What are some other ways on your side of the aisle do you see AI impacting things in the future?
I think that there's a lot of inefficient workflows that can be improved with the AI agents. I think that one area that is unrelated to agents that is quite interesting is the idea of product design. So, another really big thing that's happened in the last week or two is the release of the new 4.0 image gen model from OpenAI.
The Ghibli generator.
Exactly. We've had image gen now for a couple of years, but it's definitely a big step up. And what that means is that we can get to, maybe not complete high fidelity product definition, but we can at least get you a pretty good first attempt at a design. And now what that has done is it's essentially democratized design for users. You now no longer need to, you're no longer dealing with a sketchbook to get that first idea out there. You can do a sketch and then you can pass that to OpenAI and say hey, fill in the details, and they can actually bring your idea to life. So that's one thing that I think is really interesting. Now, there's limitations to it, obviously. There's a lot that goes into the details of, the fit of a shirt, for instance, that are going to be harder to capture there. But certainly for a lot of the design elements that can be captured by something like an image gen tool, this is a huge step forward.
So almost anyone in our audience that's feeling unsure, that has a brand, is unsure or is facing the impacts of these tariffs, it's just probably smart for them to review their production and supply chain at this time. Whether they start manually, whether they go to Cavela, it's like everyone has to take it's a long night of the soul tonight to look at where your products are coming from and how efficient they're being made.
How efficient they're being made, and then look at other areas of your business. This is a game of just trying to squeeze out every efficiency that you can. Review which products are selling the best. There's a lot of optimization that has to go into your business. It's hard to optimize the sourcing. What we can do is find you the lowest cost supplier in any given country, and then you make a decision from there. But ultimately, that's left up to the brand.
We're coming to this era where you can speak your dreams into existence. If you have Shopify was a big part of the democratization of commerce to be able to make these stores. And now you can design Shopify stores by verbally telling, AI kind of what you want it to be. You're democratizing the back end of this when it comes to product creation, product design, product sourcing. I'm still very bullish on AI and on humanity's role at wielding it. How do you feel about humanity's role in this whole process in the long term?
I'm super positive. The way I think about this for this space in particular, I think a good parallel is digital content creation, right? The last decade saw a radical shift for digital content where when you think about digital content, radio, TV shows, all that kind of stuff, that used to be made by large teams of people with expensive production equipment and access to all these tools and networks. And what happened in the last decade is that digital content got democratized. Now suddenly you don't need a whole production team in order to put out any digital content. It's now, podcasters are replacing entire news organizations. You have an entire industry of TikTokers who are creating video content that can be monetized. So you've moved from a world in digital content that has been largely dominated by groups and entities and is now run by individuals, and it created an entirely new economy. The economy of podcasts was unimaginable even, 10 years ago. And I think that if the last decade was about digital content, the next decade will be about physical content. Because what allowed digital content to go from being made by groups to individuals was the democratization of the means of distribution, which is social media, and the means of production, which is your iPhone camera and, podcast recording equipment and all that. On the production side, on physical products, you have the same need. You need distribution, which is Shopify. But you have means of production. Means of production is still very difficult. And so until means of production is democratized, then you're not going to be able to have individuals replace brands. But I think in the long run, you're going to see brands are going to be individuals. You're going to have a 1, 2, 3 person team that is going to run circles around some of these larger brands simply because they have, better marketing. They have a better brand identity, and they have good ideas that they can execute on that right now only the larger brands are able to execute. But I think that I'm super bullish on this because I think that now you're going to see a world where physical products can be made by brands run by a couple people, and they are going to do super well.
The other word there, when I think about podcasts, is decentralization, which I love, where it's every media source within 10 years of its creation was almost fully centralized, owned by a handful of corporations, whereas podcasts are inherently decentralized. It's an RSS feed. They're very hard to censor. It's technology, just put it out there. The RSS feed picks it up, and then anyone who wants to can listen to it. I can see that theme working through to production as well when you're talking about these small teams.
Absolutely, yeah.
I did a podcast also with at Shop Talk with Shein, and they were talking a lot about their move towards on-demand product creation as well, because in traditional modes of e-commerce, you just have this mass production, which is always going to lead to some forms of waste. I imagine with this sort of decentralization and democratization of commerce, it leads to more opportunities to just create the products that are needed more on demand at smaller scales to create less waste.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, we saw that with t-shirts and hats that are increasingly made at very low MOQs, and they're made based off of what you want. But we haven't seen that for many more complex products, right? And I think that will change as you have tighter integration between what customers want and what factories can do. And so, to a large extent, we've seen that as suppliers have become increasingly online. So you have, factories, 20 years ago, they were just factories, but now they have a sales department. Now they have an in-house designer. Now they have someone who speaks English, who's, handling the communication. And these suppliers are becoming standalone brands, like proto brands in a sense. And I think that is something that's interesting, that's affecting the space. I think that, in a world where an end consumer can buy directly from a supplier, I think that brands have to think very carefully about how they can still offer something that is compelling to an end consumer. Because, if you're buying directly from the factory, it's always going to be cheaper. I give an example, Yeti, right? So Yeti, they make these tumblers. There are tumblers out there that you can buy on Temu or Shein that are excellent, and they don't cost as much as a Yeti tumbler. So why would you buy a Yeti tumbler? And why would people buy from brands directly? Well, it's because Yeti is a brand. People, they love that brand identity. And I think that what you're going to see in a world where people can increasingly buy from suppliers, that brands are going to lean into this idea of brand identity. And so your differentiator as a brand is no longer going to be on your product offering. It's not going to be, hey, we're the best at this product. Because ultimately there's going to be a supplier out there who can do a very competitive product that will be able to, that consumers can buy directly from. But if you have a really compelling brand, and people are willing to pay no matter what, even if it's more expensive than buying from an excellent supplier who's making an excellent product, then you've really hit jackpot.
Do you feel we're headed into an era where it's going to be tougher for the mega companies like Temu and Shein?
I mean, they're definitely sweating right now because this remains to be confirmed, but it's seeming like the de minimis loophole that allowed consumers to, buy from these suppliers directly and import basically goods duty-free as long as they were under a certain amount. It was duty-free, and now that loophole is being closed. So it's going to be suddenly much more expensive to buy from them.
Yeah. You've built these agents for AI to solve this problem. Do you have designs on other aspects of the e-commerce journey or other aspects within product and sourcing that you're going to be turning agents loose on in the future?
We're focusing on the problem of sourcing for now. But what we are looking at early stages is trying to help with that initial side of product definition and design. Usually you're always looking to tweak your design a little bit. You want to see, okay, I have this product now. Can I make it in a different color? Or can I tweak this and that? And so there's some low-hanging fruit in using AI to really visualize that and have those ideas come to life. So without having generative AI do the full design, I think that there are some things that we can incorporate that help you make these tweaks to your design to sort of iterate on your product with every order. And we're looking at that, yeah.
Anything in your personal life? Anything you're using agents for in your personal life? Do you make restaurant reservations or answer emails or anything like that?
I'm looking at it for email automation. Obviously we've looked at that in depth for Cavela. And I just realized, I think actually embarrassingly late, that I could just apply this to my own life. And it definitely, I always aspired to inbox zero, and I was always almost there, but not quite. And this has been the last little piece that really allowed me to do that. So I have it plugged into emails, and it converts that to some calendar events and tasks as well.
I'm still waiting. I still think the next big innovation will be just persistent AI butlers, where we have these butlers who look after us. They know us better than maybe we know ourselves. They can you input your goals into these butlers, and they can tell who in your life has your best interest at heart, who doesn't. They can remind you maybe when you're not acting up to your own ideals, just like a stuffy butler would in the 1600s.
I can see it. I mean, like, honestly, I'm in San Francisco right now, and the number of different startups that you see being built, this is going so fast. I think that the world in 5 years is going to look very, very different. And we're going to look back at this era where it's, AI is largely, in most people's experience, just Chat GPT. It's a chat interface that is able to...
It's a window.
Exactly.
It's
a chat window that can make Studio Ghibli images. We're going to look at this moment in history and be like, we didn't know what was coming.
100%. And I think agents are the next phase of that, which are very task specific. They can create a string of tasks based on an objective. The next thing, I guess, is persistence, where it's like I was asking my co-founder today, like, how long until we have 1 or 2 or 3 persistent AI employees who fully understand every aspect of the business and are working, on our behalf. And I feel like that's a year or 2 out kind of thing.
I think, it's definitely a year or 2 out. There's a lot of things to resolve first. And AI agents are still doing some, there's a lot of straightforward tasks that need to be ironed out in different industries. Look, I think that we haven't scratched the surface yet. There's a lot that's going to happen. I think that what AI allows for is a couple things. One, just personalization is going to just skyrocket. And the other is just, a general shift in paradigm. I think about Google, right? Google is a fantastic product. You type in any search term and then you get, 10,000 search results, and they're ranked by how relevant they are to your search. And that's great, but ChatGPT came and they realized that you're not looking for 10,000 search results. You're looking for one search result that's customized to you, and that's a fundamental shift in paradigm. We're no longer being in a world where the internet and tech experiences are just, we're going to retrieve all the information and let you parse it. Now AI is parsing it for you, and that's kind of what we're building, for instance, with Cavela here, where Alibaba is that same idea. You type in custom water bottles on Alibaba and you get 10,000 suppliers who make 10,000 water bottles, but you're not looking for 10,000 suppliers. You're looking for one supplier. And so if, Alibaba is to Google what Cavela is to ChatGPT in that sense. And I think that what you're going to see, that shift from a Google world to a ChatGPT world, is the same kind of shift you're going to see in a lot of different spaces in the next couple of years.
Which is going to be very destabilizing for a lot of companies like Google, who have existed on this arbitrage between like this full list of 10,000 options when all you really want is the right one, right? And if you can maybe you'll just have to charge a lot more to serve the right one. Super interesting. What a brave new world we find ourselves in. I said, how lucky are we to have lived through the internet, which, the advent of the internet, which has changed things far more than, our parents, our grandparents could have imagined. And I feel like whatever's coming next, this convergence of AI, quantum, perhaps, blockchain, all decentralization, all of these things are kind of converging at what appears to be a very necessary time. So who knows how much more exponentially different things could look in the future.
I think we're entering the most interesting of times.
I've said it for a long time. We're here for the show. But if you are in the D2C audience, you got to go to Cavela.com. We actually have an affiliate link that we'll post in the show notes here. If you just go to Cavela.com, make sure to tell them that D2C sent you. But otherwise, I think a lot of people are going to want to be having conversations with you in the next little while, through D2C and just in general, as people are looking for options.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, look, this is a very timely conversation for this. As we said, the tariffs were announced yesterday. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it possible for anyone to build their own brand. And part of that is having a viable sourcing option available. And that's what we're providing. So anyone who's listening and clicks on that affiliate link will have access to Cavela, but also for that specific link, we're giving 50% off the first sample. That's a little bit of an extra there.
Great offer. Well, thanks, Anthony. It was really awesome chatting with you today. I look forward to maybe having a chat in the future as we enter this brave new world, because I think, you're on the cusp of some really big things. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.